again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal. Perry and the fans want one. Score! On the floor! Paul Kariya!
Yeah, we're live.
That was all?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, screw it. Let's just start doing the dang thing. So we decided, since the Anaheim Ducks took the night off tonight, they're currently down, I think, 15-3.
It might as well be. Felt like that one.
To St. Louis. We decided we were just going to play FIFA while we do our post-deadline talk tonight. And, yeah. First and foremost, we do apologize for the trade deadline show. There it is. Taking a second. I got sick. My daughter got sick. I think Eddy had a couple of things come up, so we apologize for that. But you guys, it's us.
You know it's not like too much happened for.
I think
in general, really, but for the Ducks, nothing happened. So
right. So I guess you want to let's do this first. Let's just go ahead and say Brian Dumoulin to the New Jersey Devils. I believe it was for a second-round pick and a forward prospect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how do you feel about that?
So, I mean, listen, we gave up a fourth to get him, and to get a second, I think when we did our preview, we said, like, listen, if you can get a third conditional to turn into a second or something like that, then that is probably like the top end of a return. To add in a prospect that the Devils drafted in the third round, who's doing pretty well in Sweden right now, to add that into the mix like that does not feel real that they were able to get that. Like, honestly, of the guys we had to move, that is absolutely like the top end of what we could have got in return for Dumoulin, right? Like, you really can't do anything better, and it makes the deadline an A with the assets you had available to trade, right? Like, Dumoulin was the only guy we knew would be moved out the door. He was the asset that had to go. So when you look at the return for the only asset we had to move, it's honestly better than you would ever expect. It's as good as it gets for that. So listen, I'm happy with it. A second round pick, I would have been ecstatic with. You add a right shot, heavy two-way forward to the mix. That just makes it even that much better.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think, you would say maybe given the 50% retention, you want, I don't know, another little pick or something like that. And I think, some level of bias here, but I do think he was one of the better defensive players available at this deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's something to be said for, like, you wonder if maybe there was a little bit more value out there. But at the end of the day, like you said, the process is pretty much perfect. I think there was some amount of, why are we giving up a pick to bring in a defender that doesn't have, the right-handed stick like we were looking for? And I think those criticisms, to an extent, were certainly valid at the time. But I think ultimately, it worked out. He came in and he played a role, and he was a really good player for this team. He was a good player for this team for, 55, almost 60 games. And, he really provided a very steady presence. It was really nice to know that every single pair was going to have a pretty stable veteran on it, right? Especially with as nice as it has been to see Jackson Lacombe come on so strong, especially this last 15, 20 games. He's really just jumped to another level offensively. As nice as it's been, I certainly think he would be capable of pairing with a Hellison. It is nice to just be able to put him with someone like a Gudis and just be like, no, that pairing has worked all year. We don't need to break it. We don't need to fix it. It's not broken.
You could argue too, like as much as it caused a logjam, which we kind of, admitted and was a problem.
Sure, yeah, 100%.
It was the thought process behind bringing him in at the beginning of the year to say, let's have a veteran on every line when we're going to have 3 rookies that are likely going to all play on separate lines in Zellweger, Mintyukov, and Lacombe. Like, it doesn't hurt to insulate each of those guys with a guy who's been around the league for a long time and has a ton of experience. Like, the thought process behind that, I don't hate. Obviously,
not at all.
It turned into Zellweger and Mintyukov being out of the lineup for a long period of time. So, like, I understand, the desire and the need to move him at the end of the day. But the thought process originally behind it, like, you can respect it a bit.
Oh, 100%. I think the process was absolutely fine. I think the results were absolutely fine. I get that, especially, a little later in the season, it got harder to scratch Zellweger and Mintyukov for so many games and things like that. I do think there was a little bit of what are the organization's plans for Zellweger. Some of that stuff felt a little overblown to me. It never seemed to me that they didn't like him.
No.
It really did. It's really interesting to me because
some guys you had to play, right?
Well, it's not even that. It's also like, I don't actually mind giving them 4 and 5 game stretches apiece and swapping them out in chunks as opposed to, only ever playing, 1 or 2 games. I think giving them stretches of being able to be in the lineup is better than them kind of alternating being in the lineup. Because I think it allows you to keep that rhythm from game to game. Now, to the obvious counterpoint, it does stay a little bit harder to get back into game kind of shape or game speed, however you want to look at it, the longer those stretches are. But I think when they are paired with long stretches of being in the lineup, it's mitigated a little bit because you are still allowing the young players to have those runs and to find their footing as the game goes on, or as the season goes on.
Yeah, and listen to, like, Zellweger played a handful of games at the end of last year, correct? And
he played like 35, 40 games I think last year.
Mintyukov played a pretty close to a full season, so again, they are still relatively green in the grand scheme of things. So, in a season where it's transition season still, we know the team was going to be bad. We hope to be a little bit better, and they have been, and they've kind of sniffed in and around a playoff spot. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to kind of ease these guys into that sort of action and say, like, we're going to bring you in and out of the lineup for the first half of the season. We all know, whether this isn't said, but internally, Dumoulin is likely going to be moved out the door. And then for the last 20, 25 games of the season, they get a full run at it, right? And it's kind of what we said could happen with Lucas Dostal. Obviously, John Gibson has missed so much time, and Dostal's played so well that he just took over the starting job sooner than that. But that you kind of ease them into action to start the year. I mean, we look at it with Carlson's game management last year, right? You ease them into action for the first 40, 50 games, and then you let them loose for the final third of the season. So it is, in a way, kind of that, and I don't hate it because of that. And now, for the rest of the year, Mintyukov and Zellweger are going to benefit from playing every single game. So whether, only they can say whether playing on and off for the last little bit helped or hurt them, but I don't think it is as bad as it was made out to be. And obviously, like, the solution was always there, that it was going to be Dumoulin that gets moved out the door and the logjam gets cleared up.
Well, yeah, and I do think, like, if you wanted to say, there was some smoke around Dumoulin extension stuff, and, like, if you wanted to say that was legit and it felt legit based on what we were hearing from reporters, what we were hearing from Dumoulin himself, even a few insiders kind of mentioned, it felt like that was very real. Okay, so that means they're probably going to have to trade one of Mintyukov, Zellweger, and Helleson. And if that's the case, I don't think Verbeek has sold aggressively low on anybody, right? I mean, look, even to all the crap about Trevor Zegras, he's at least appreciated that his value, if like, right, because look, there is a degree to which it does feel like he's just going to get moved at some point. I think we talked about that last episode, and we were hoping if it was, the return was at least worth it, and it was somebody who could make a difference on this team. But he hasn't sold like aggressively low on anybody. And I think he's not going to start doing that for ELC defensemen who have what I would say is pretty clearly 50 point upside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there was a degree to which, okay, maybe they extend Dumoulin, maybe they move on from Zellweger or Hellison or something like that. Okay, but if they're doing that, it's probably going to be part of a package. They're probably going to get something meaningful out of it. And I think there have been times where his process has been imperfect and some of the day-to-day stuff has been frustrating. But like, I really don't hate the way that Pat Verbeek has run this team outside of coaching, which we've talked at length about. We don't need to get into that necessarily right now. But like, other than coaching, I mean, do you feel that there have been any serious mismanagements or missteps with how he has approached building this team?
I don't think there's been any missteps with how he's built the team. I would say like the frustrations are valid to say that like, listen, he hasn't gone out and kind of made a big swing or come to fruition with some of the promises he's made of adding a top 6 goal scoring forward, a right shot defenseman for the top 4. Trouba, I guess you could say, was that acquisition, so he did eventually come good on that one. But for the goal scoring right shot winger, that didn't happen. We all were kind of disappointed at the end of the summer when he made those promises right at the beginning, I think heading into the draft, and then nothing happened. But to be fair, like, you don't want to go out and pay over market for that. And then you're kind of left sitting there hanging, saying like, okay, well, we great that we got this, but what did we have to give up to get it? Was it worth it? So like, again, that's not a misstep. That's just a missed opportunity. And who knows, like, again, there hasn't been a Mitch Marner type player available. Well, there is this summer, so I can maybe judge that as a misstep if you miss out on a guy like that, because you have so much more money to offer him kind of above market and try and get it done and convince him to come here. But even then, I don't think if he doesn't come to Anaheim, it's at any fault of Pat Verbeek. If he just didn't feel it was, the right situation for him, then again, so I would say, I don't think he's really done anything to harm or hurt the organization at this point. The lack of moves of moving guys like Zegras you could put down to the fact that they just felt like they weren't getting value for, and I'd rather that than moving them just for the sake of moving them. Yeah,
100%. No, 100%. I think, I'm, I'll say it till my lungs explode. Like, I am incredibly happy we haven't moved on from Trevor Zegras. I have so much, maybe at this point, just based on what we've seen, irrational faith in him. But I really do think he is the type of player that you don't want to let go. And he has the opportunity to be the type of player that you're like, he went 9th? Like, was it 9 or 10? Was it
9?
9, because Turcotte was 8, right?
Turcotte was like
7.
Turcotte was like 5, I think.
Was he that high?
He was very high. Part of me was about to say 3, but then I don't think he went.
No. He was at the earliest it was 5. I thought he was a pick or 2 before. But yeah, like I just don't think there's been any issues. And to your point about going out and taking that big swing and adding someone, like there certainly, I think, is something to be said for not making that move until you feel you have a better understanding of what your team, your team really is. And like, the one thing that we've seen, I think, these last 10-ish, 12-ish games is that there is talent on this roster enough to make a real difference.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It's starting to make an impact, Like we were talking about it before we started recording as far as just with the game tonight. Is there an opportunity for Cutter to hit 20 goals? Well, that didn't look like it was going to be even in the realm of possibility middle of January.
Yeah.
And so, if he looks like he can hit 20 goals this year, that's going to be huge, right? That's a big step forward for him and for the forward group as a whole. Mason McTavish has started to play better and looked much more commanding in the center of the ice. We've got that line with him and Colangelo and I don't like this anymore. With him and Colangelo and Cutter, and they look like a real line. And so I think, Leo has looked stronger. Zegras has started to play a little bit looser. And I think there is something to be said of the best chance that this team has to add without meaningfully subtracting is going to be in free agency this summer. And if he is able to go out and get someone like Mitch Marner this summer, we've talked a little bit about it, going out and getting a Noah Dobson, or maybe even offer sheeting someone like Dobson. There's a lot there to think that this team next year could be in the position that we were hoping they'd be in this year in a meaningful way, right? Like maybe that playoff push isn't a 6-point push, it's a 4-point push, right? Mm-hmm. Or, it was 6 points for a while, but because they didn't play, it actually became an 8-point push. And so you ended up with it kind of being up and down. There's a lot of scoreboard watching for hoping you can move up. And I think if this team is where, like Utah is or where Montreal is this year, if Anaheim next season is in the similar position to Montreal or Utah this year, I think you're looking at a really good thing, and there's a lot to be excited about. And I think you can sell a player like Mitch Marner on we think we can make a real push for the playoffs. We think you can be a big part of that. And we also think that if you come here, you're going to be able to be that finishing piece that makes this all work and really makes this all come together. And, I guess the comparison would be, does Mitch Marner want to be Marian Hossa? You know what I mean? That late addition to the team that really pushes it over the edge. Because I believe Marian Hossa was a free agency thing. Again, two-way player. But what Marian Hossa meant for the way Chicago was able to build their lines, the way that they were able to play, having that guy, that was huge. Mitch Marner could reasonably be that type of player. I think Mitch Marner is probably better than Marian Hossa. Yeah,
it feels like almost adding the Patrick Kane part of that team to your organization, right, in terms of production.
Sure. Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, is the core of this team with the young players we have is there. You can make the argument, at the very least for the forward group, they are that one major piece away from completing it, barring anything going very wrong with development, right? They have enough pieces in the system and enough good young players on the roster that they are that kind of one major piece away. And they can honestly point to that with the progress that they made this year, the fact that goal scoring just was a major issue for them, and then you bring in a guy who can put up 100 points, you can kind of fit, the puzzle piece in and say, this is how you're going to fit into this team, this is how you're going to make us better, and then in turn, this is how we're going to make the playoffs next year and at least go and try and go for a run. And then, you sell it as, if we make it next year, and then the next few years beyond this, we're competing, right? Because these young guys are going to get better. We're going to add more of our young pieces to the roster. And then you're a part of this run for the next, 5-6 years of really pushing for a Stanley Cup. So, I mean, listen, we're biased for sure. The sell job
100%.
seems fairly good compared to a lot of other situations out there in terms of a long-term approach, right?
Well, here's the other thing.
He's not going to fall into another rebuild during this, likely, right? That's the...
Right, that's exactly right. And I think, a source of frustration for me has been the way that I think the free agency conversation has been. And I get why people want to like make the Chicago Blackhawks better because they've got Connor Bedard, and there are people who are kind of talking about that as like, oh, he's going to ask for a trade because it's not going well, and they're not adding, and we'll get. I don't think we've talked about the Seth Jones trade. We'll get to that.
Yeah, you got to talk Rotten.
But I mean,
too, obviously,
if you're
well.
Mitch Marner, do you want to spend the last 5 years of your prime hoping to make a deep run on a team that isn't ready, where you're 8 years older than the next best player?
Yeah,
like I don't think there's anything there for him. I don't think there's anything there for him, to be honest, in San Jose. They're so far away. They don't have the defensive pipeline. Sam Dickinson hasn't even played a game unless I'm significantly mistaken.
Yeah, I don't think so.
If
it was a handful at the start of the year, if anything. I can't remember. I think he might have got a couple in. I can't remember, to be honest with you.
But other than, somebody making a big move to create room, there aren't a lot of teams that are going to have the ability to look at him and be like, not only can we pay you the salary that you want, but we actually don't have to trade anybody to do it, and we're going to have plenty of room that's not a good start. We're going to have plenty of room to keep the guys that are already here. Whereas if you go to a San Jose or you go to a Chicago, it's, well, we're hoping the guys that we have in the pipeline come good before your contract is up. And it's like, I don't think that that's all that alluring. I do think there is going to be something to Pittsburgh being a threat and his ability to maybe go play with someone like Sidney Crosby, go play for Kyle Dubas, who was always obviously a very big fan of his. Although I did hear something very interesting. I think it was Friedman or no, you know who it was? It was Rachel Dory on Puck Soup. And she was saying that I guess before his NMC kicked in, Kyle Dubas went to Brendan Shanahan and was like, I want to trade Mitch Marner. And Brendan Shanahan straight up told him no. So, I mean, maybe that relationship isn't quite what you think it is.
Yeah.
In terms of, Mitch Marner trusting him or liking him or whatever it is, right? Like those are all very emotional things, and they can change very quickly. I mean, hell, Megan Fox said she would never do another movie with Michael Bay again because she hated CGI after being in the first 2 Transformers movies, and then she was in both of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. These things are just so mercurial. But I think Anaheim is really in a really good position to really be a genuinely high-end, attractive destination for meaningful free agents this summer, and I'm very curious to see, because I do think that to an extent, Pat Verbeek kind of has 2 plays here. One is go out and get a big name via free agency or trade that puts this team over the top. Or Beckett Seneca turns into a star. Yeah. Right? Like that's because the other guys we know.
Well, and then you go out and maybe you go out and you pursue like a Brock Besser or somebody who's not like not at an elite level like Marner, but you could say, okay, well, I got this, but we also have this kid on the way as well, right? So you can kind of sell it a little bit better. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's absolutely right.
I think too with again Pittsburgh, LA, other teams who've kind of been in that conversation with Mitch Marner. The problem with those is that could fall apart next 2 seasons from now. Like Kopitar Doughty go from LA. Do the wheels fall off? Do they have enough to mitigate that loss? He goes to Pittsburgh. There's nothing after Sid and Malkin are gone. Sid, Malkin, Letang. There's nothing, right?
They got what is it, Lucius? But that's about it.
Yeah, but you're still. I think they still have McGrody as well, right? So.
McGrody's who I'm thinking of. McGrody,
but still,
it's
from
not
Winnipeg. Enough, and you're stuck there for 7 years. So.
Right.
you got to look at the 7-year outlook as this. I don't think he's a guy who would want to go through another rebuild, right? Like, I believe he caught the tail end of the Toronto rebuild, or at least the beginning of what was building this. I doubt in the point where he is in his career now, he'd want to go through something like that again. So that comes into the outlook of it, and I don't know if there's many teams that are in a better position. I mean, you could probably argue Carolina would be an interesting one to keep an eye on, but he did.
Sure.
Not
he
wave to
didn't
go
wave
there, but
to
that
go
could
there.
be just I want to finish things out the right way in Toronto.
Yeah.
So you never know. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. Like I would say, you could just make an argument about them because they are significantly better in a good spot in their window, young enough that it would make sense for them. But beyond that, and again, there is some obvious bias there. Anaheim does feel like a very good spot for him to kind of kickstart and be right at the cusp in the beginning of that turn into being a playoff team and a competitive team.
So there are two Anaheim-specific things I want to talk about with you. Do you want to talk about them after, or do you want to do the rest of the trade deadline?
Well, we might as well cover them now because we've been heavy in on the Ducks side of things, so we might as well discuss it now. So what do you got?
Here are the two things. The first one is I had told you I had something I wanted to talk to you about, and then because I am an impatient fool, I had told you actually what it was I wanted to talk about. I looked at it, and I think that there is a very strong argument this summer to buy out John Gibson.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, we did talk about
that. I think that move. Nice pass, bud. I think. So he'll have 2 years left this summer at 6.4, which means he's over 25. So you do 2/3 of it for the buyout over double years, which means it would be 2.133 for 4 years. So it would be a $4.3 million savings roughly for the first 2 years, and then it would be a $2.1 million cap hit over a zero, right? Because the contract would be expired at that point.
Yeah.
And I think with a potential $7 million jump this year and potentially even bigger ones, because I believe the Canadian TV deal is coming up soon, so there should be a good amount of money around. Oh boy, that's embarrassing.
It's 2.133 versus 6.4
for 2 years.
For next year, or the next year and the year after.
Next year and the year after. So it's either 2 years at 6.4 or 4 years at 2.13.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that is the best case, last case situation, right? Like, if that makes any sense. I know that probably doesn't, but it's like this feels like the last year John Gibson should be in a Ducks uniform.
I don't think he can be on this roster next year.
And that is, you do that if you can't find a suitor for him, just to say, one, let's do him a favor. Thank you.
100%.
We got to get you out
the door. It is a thank you.
And two, just free up some cap space and let Lucas Dostal run with it. Like, as a roster perspective, it doesn't hurt your team to allow Lucas Dostal to run with it and either promote Callie Klang as a backup or bring in a veteran backup to put behind him.
I think you go out,
at a cheaper cost.
Sign a backup. Yeah.
I mean, and it saves you $4 million immediate in cap space. And again, if we're talking, and we'll keep going back to this, if we're talking about bringing in Mitch Marner and paying him a lot more than any other team, having some sort of cap relief in that short term. I know it's going to be an extra $2 million later, but that shouldn't hurt the Ducks because they're really not in a situation.
That's a fourth liner.
Yeah, they're not in a situation where that would matter.
Of ELC guys to offset that cost.
That $4 million can come in handy in the short term to, fit Mitch Marner under the books and be able to have some flexibility to do something else, right?
Well, not only that, but here's the other thing I think that why it makes so much sense is McTavish and Dostal both need extensions this summer. Mm-hmm. I don't see how Dostal comes in under 6, and I don't think you can pay $12.5 million minimum for 2 goalies. I don't, I always think about that one year the Stars had, who was it? It was like Antti Niemi and Antero Niittymaki maybe was the 2 goalies they had, and they were both making starter money, which at that point was like $4.5 million. I mean, again,
what did
Thompson
Adin Hill just get?
5.5. Adin Hill just got 6.25. He got Ryan Ellis money.
Yeah.
I
feel like it's going to be somewhere between there, right? Like,
I think he's going to get a bridge deal. I think they're going to sway in him.
Fair.
I think he's going to get a 3 or 4 year deal for between $6 and $7 million.
And
because look, he looks like a Vezina caliber goalie, and if he is a Vezina caliber goalie, then he's an $8 million goalie.
Yeah, I think that's fair for both teams to just, or for both parties to just see kind of what he is. He's worth that amount for 3 or 4 years, and then you got to say, okay, like, risk adverse here a little bit to just make sure what we got is what we got.
Mm-hmm.
And then as Dostal is, for him to say he knows what he is, and if he ends up being an elite goaltender in this league, he'll get paid to do it. And it really only costs the Ducks like an extra $3 million to do so. And at that point, like, if that's what you're getting, we've had this conversation a bunch of times. If you get that out of it, it doesn't matter that you're paying him a little bit extra. Like, you got the best case scenario of the type of player that you're getting from that deal. You're getting one of the top 3, top 5 netminders in the league is what you're hoping for.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't, and again, I just think the air that it lets out of the balloon for this Ducks season, you got to be kidding me right now. That was a great pass. That should have been a goal. I suck. Absolutely terrible. I just think the air that it lets out of the balloon is invaluable. I really do.
Yeah.
And I think because he's
the
been
last
great.
like
I have
looming
not
thing
heard
that's
a
waiting
single
there.
thing from anybody about John Gibson being a stick in the mud about this whole situation and stuff like that. The only reason you wouldn't be able to buy him out would be if he wasn't healthy. They've got Ville Husso. Just sit him. Just sit him for the rest of the year. Let him get healthy. He has absolutely earned the right. We've talked about this 100 times. He has earned the right to get a fresh start on a new team. And a buyout is probably the best way to give him that opportunity. And I don't think, if you trade him, there's an outside shot. You have to add something because of the cap hit, because of the injury history. I'd rather just pay the money, man. I'd rather not move a pick that we can use in a trade or use to add a depth piece or something like that. Like, I think the net, I think buying him out is a net positive. And unless someone is like, actually, we really do think we can get something out of this and are willing to give up some kind of meaningful asset. Like it. I don't think it's worth it to just be an asshole about this. And
I mean, listen, like it really would feel like almost a punishment to bring him up at this point, right? Like, we've been working on this for what feels like 5 years, and it's realistically probably the last 2 to 3 seasons where
I would say it's been about 2.5, 3 years of,
Yeah.
Is this going to be a thing?
And it always feels like, oh, well, we're going to get to the summer, and there's going to be more suitors for a goaltender because teams are going to know where they're at and this and that, and then he doesn't get moved because for whatever reason, teams got a guy in free agency.
Drew O'Connor runs into him. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
100%.
so it just feels like we can't go into another summer where you say, well, we didn't get what we wanted for him, so we're just not going to move him. Like, it feels like there has to be a resolution at some point that is just fair for the player and for the team to kind of get out from under this situation in a way that works for both parties. Like, we don't want to have to pay to get rid of him at any point. Pay assets that are going to help this team. Like, if you can buy him out, I think that's probably like I said, the best case scenario beyond getting some significant assets for him, which just doesn't feel like it's possible at this point.
So real quick, I just want to timestamp this. Apparently, and I only know this because I've been getting text messages, there was an earthquake right now, and I did not feel it, which is the second earthquake in the last week and a half that I have just straight up not felt. which feels potentially like a problem. But yeah.
What the problem is you're not feeling it, or the problem that you
Yeah.
had 2 earthquakes?
Well, look, I live in California, so there is something to be said of,
Yeah.
Earthquake clusters just kind of happens. But yeah, the fact that I didn't feel 2 of them, because I normally don't feel earthquakes, but I thought I had kind of gotten past that in a sense. What the hell is that goalie doing? But yeah, it's very weird that I'm getting text messages asking if I'm okay, and there was an earthquake I just absolutely did not feel. That's crazy.
What was the other Ducks thing we had beyond that?
So, we have the Solberg thing, which I kind of forgot about. All right, here's what I want to do. I want to make a case to you for something, and I want you to tell me what you think.
Okay.
I am going to make an argument for why Greg Cronin should keep his job.
Oh wow, you're gonna make an argument for why Greg
I'm
Cronin?
I'm not being funny. I have been thinking about this for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I think that there is an interesting argument to be made for breaking down to build up. And the thing about this that I was thinking about was comparing Mintyukov and Zegras.
Right.
Mintyukov's rookie season was Greg Cronin's first season. To that point, Zegras had already played 2 years and about 15 games or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, Mintyukov last year was given a ton of space to be aggressive, to attack on offense, to get up the ice, to really make rush chances, things like that. We were seeing him be much more creative in the offensive zone as far as his pinching and some of the plays he was trying to make off the rush and things like that. This year, I feel like that has been tamped down a healthy bit.
Okay.
Comparing that to Trevor Zegras, who had those 2 years before Cronin to get acclimated to the league. He comes in, Cronin just says right off the bat, what this is about is getting everybody to play the right brand of hockey. And it's about value systems, and it's about making sure that everybody is putting in a full effort for 200 feet to help this team be the best team it can be and maximizing this team's potential. I think it's pretty clear at this point where we stand on whether or not he has helped build these guys up. And what these guys have kind of looked like this year. I've said it repeatedly. I feel like the player who has taken the biggest leap has been Jackson Lacombe. And there was a quote from Greg Cronin that I can't get out of my head of him being like, yeah, and I think a lot of that is just him being older. He's just farther along in his development because he spent 4 years in college, and these guys haven't had that. So, he's got this regimen, he's got all this stuff, he's playing at a higher kind of level. And I wonder, is there an argument to be made that next season, or let me say it this way, I can see a world in which next season he just kind of taps Trevor Zegras on the shoulder and he just tells him, fucking go for it. You just spent 2 seasons learning what I want from you, learning what I expect of you, learning the type of attention to detail, attention to defense, these types of good habits that I think are fundamental to you being a good hockey player. You just spent 2 years learning them. Now, I want you to just go out and do all that shit that you used to do, but just be smarter about it. Just be a little bit smarter and a little bit more careful, and I want to unleash you fully upon this league, but now you have this base level of defensive knowledge and accountability that I expect of you, and I think you are capable of. I mean, to his credit, Cronin came out and gave a quote, I think within the last week, maybe last 10 days, where he was like, Trevor Zegras' numbers aren't great, but he's playing really well. And I'm really proud of the progress that he's made as a player this season.
Right.
So I've just been
Do you just think there's more to come after the focus of what he's, or after, they kind of shift what he's been focusing on, and he feels like the guys have done what he's wanted them to over the last little bit? You think once he unleashes these guys, that you got to wait for that to kind of judge him fully?
I don't think that that's what I expect. What it is what is an argument that makes sense to me that could make him coming back next year work? Because I am so against him coming back. I have no real faith in him coming back next season and seeing a substantially different kind of outcome from this team and level of play. And I think I've been trying to think about it, and it's, because he had that Michigan attempt, 4 or 5 days ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, there's that
throwback.
dude. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so I've been trying to challenge my biases, right? All that kind of stuff. And really force myself to kind of think about it from a different angle. And there is something to be said for the argument of I have been breaking these guys down to then build them back up and make them great hockey players. I do have some concerns that my best argument for why he should come back next year is, well, maybe if he does these things, it's worth it. Does that make sense?
No, I get it. Yeah,
I don't love that my best argument in favor
is what if.
Is potential, is all what ifs.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would be unfair to say maybe this has been his plan all along. And if it was his plan all along, Trevor Zegras has to hit 70 points next year. If he doesn't hit 70 points, then it's nothing.
My concern with that is what if that thought process just coincides with natural progression of this team, right? Where, it, like we said with Zegras multiple times, this is technically one bad season from him,
right?
With the amount of games played. And what if, just shrugs that off next year and gets to the point where we kind of all hope and expect he's going to get to, and then the rest of this team takes a step forward, but it has really nothing to do with Greg Cronin, or not a lot to do with it, just this team getting older and more experienced, and then he keeps his job and benefits from that just because. I mean, I guess the argument is, does it really matter at that point, right? The team would be doing good. And yes, Greg Cronin will be getting the credit, but do we really care as long as the team's playing well?
Yes, I do. I really do. Because I think the reason it matters is because it significantly informs the way the team operates moving forward. Because if there is any reason to think the credit belongs to Cronin, then anytime a player slips, doesn't get there or something like that, you're operating from, well, we know it works. So it's a problem with the player. And that's concerning, assuming it's not Greg Cronin.
Right.
If this team comes out and plays with real structure next year, and we see this kind of system working, and he just completely, gets these guys playing back to more of their own style within a larger defensive system, then I'm fine with that. That's a good thing to me, right? That's the progress you're looking for as a fan, as a GM, things like that. And so it does matter to me who gets the credit, because I think who gets the credit informs how you analyze, other events that follow it, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it very much matters, because I do think that there is a version of a kind of hard-ass head coach that works for this team, but I do think it has to be within a confines of almost I think it was George Karl. I think it was George Karl. That might be right. But George Karl he was the head coach of the Denver Nuggets for a long time. His whole thing was, I don't really give a shit what you do in the offensive end. Give me everything that matters in the defensive ends. If you follow my instructions and we play team defense and individual defense the way that we need to be successful in this league, you can do whatever the fuck you want at the other end of the court. I don't care, because I trust your offensive talent. That was dumb. I trust your offensive talent, and I trust my stars to generate chances and to drive the bus there. What I need is full defensive buy-in, and as long as I get that, that's cool. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing them, they're not playing the way we have seen them play historically, and they're not playing within any set structure. So it really does feel like they're just out there trying to do something that they either don't know how to do or aren't able to do.
Right. No, that's fair.
So, I don't mind. That's a terrible pass, computer. I don't mind the idea or the conceit behind it from Pat Verbeek. I just think how successful it can or can't be, and if it's successful, why it's successful, you got to be shitting me, are important. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it makes sense. And like, I feel like we really kind of, at this point, just kind of both, how we both feel right now, have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to find a reason to keep him around or make an argument to keep him around. I guess the main argument for me keeping her around is depends what's available this offseason, because I don't want to do this again, right? Like, if we're replacing him at this point, I want it to be whoever we think is going to, or whoever organization thinks is the coach that's going to take them to the next level, get to a Stanley Cup. If that's not available, then the most sane argument for me to keeping Cronin around is that, right? And then he buys himself another season to like we said, answer those what ifs. So yeah, I think a lot of it hinges on that for me, and not knowing who's going to be available is the interesting thing, because we've talked about Andrew Brunette and a few others, but whether he'll stick around after. I mean, he's stuck around so far, I believe, right? He's still the head coach for the Predators, so I would imagine they just feel like they're going to go into next season with him and act as this is an outlier. So I don't know who's going to be available at the end of the season, but right now the list is not a long one in terms of guys that could come in and take charge and replace him. So
yeah, I mean, there's going to be guys who get fired. We just don't know who yet. But usually the guys who get fired are fired because they're not getting something out of their team. So unless Kyle Dubas just completely decides that the Mike Sullivan era is over, I'm not sure who is out there, because again, I would say that the two. Okay, let me say this. I think the name for where this team is at that could be the most exciting, I'm blaming you for that, is David Carl, who is the head coach of Denver, the University of Denver.
Okay, yeah.
And I believe coaches the men's World Junior roster.
Okay.
I think he's probably the pie in the sky argument, or pie in the sky hope, because of what he's done at Denver. And this team, again, has tons of young talent. And in theory, he would be a very good coach to help them grow as a group, and maybe he's their John Cooper, right? And he's the guy that's just there for 10 years, and he helps this team as a whole grow and evolve, and we see cups and awards and deep playoff berths and all that crap. I don't know. Then, and this is actually a perfect segue to get us into the rest of the deadline. I think the other two names that you're looking for and say, or that you're looking at and saying maybe there's something there, is yeah, you got to do this on your own. My controller almost died. The other two names that is Mike Sullivan, like I said, and maybe they just decide it's time for a change, and it doesn't matter that Sidney Crosby might burn down whatever the name of that arena is now if they fire him.
Yeah.
And then, Brad Brindamore came out and made some comments that essentially kind of read as, boy, sure seems like my general manager didn't know what he was doing when he made that Mikko Rantanen trade.
Yeah, that was. I kind of love that, to be fair, but I love mess. I'm here for the mess of it all, but that was a very odd one, and so maybe Tulsky just fucking decides, oh, I don't need my head coach undermining me. Should have gone for a chip. You're an absolute coward. If you'd have gone for the chip, you'd have had the goal. But maybe he just decides, look, I don't need my head coach questioning what I'm doing. I don't go out there and question what he's doing in the media. If he has concerns, he can talk to me, but I don't need him saying stuff like this on, a podcast or a TV interview or whatever it is. And to be fair, I think that's a perfectly valid, opinion, right? To be like, we keep this stuff in-house. I don't mind if you don't like what I'm doing. I mind when you go tell people you don't like what I'm doing. That's not how we run this. That's not a way to find success as an organization. We need to publicly all be on the same page. And, other than those two, it's maybe they fire Andrew Brunette, maybe Jay Forrester, maybe Jay Forrester or something like that is a guy that they like. But, there aren't a ton of options, like you said, that feel inspiring. There is absolutely guys out there who, just by virtue of not being Greg Cronin, I think could do better. Right. Yeah,
but
for sure.
It's hard to say there are a lot of guys that I am confident can really help this team take a step beyond allowing these players to play more freely. And you know what? Maybe that's all it takes, right? Maybe there is something to an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Excuse me. Boy, that was a name I screwed up. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer style caretaker / vibes coach who is just like, hey, man, I'm here to make sure you guys all know what you're doing. But beyond that, I'm not here to micromanage. That's not really my role. What matters to me is that you guys understand we have to do this together. We have to do this as a group. And unless we all work together, you're going to get all of us traded and fired. I don't mind that. There's value there. That, to me, is the argument for why you go out and get Bruce Boudreau. But I think he kind of seems retired at this point, though we did just see who coached. Was it Jacques Lemaire was the coach for the Senators at one point last season or whatever?
I think so, yeah.
It was Jacques Lemaire, right?
The name sounds familiar.
But it was somebody like that who had basically been out of hockey for 9-10 years or something, and then was just showed up like the Undertaker essentially. I don't like that pass. But I think that there is value in that type of coaching change and that type of coaching style. There it is. But you're right. I don't think there are a ton of names out there that are just are filling you with hope and optimism for what next season can be, short of something weird happening. And, they've said straight up, Ryan Lambert. To be fair, they're both college, so it's fine. Ryan Lambert has been pretty clear that David Carl's gig at Denver is a sweetheart gig, and he's got a young family, and the only way he's going to leave for the NHL is if he feels it's a viable, stable, long-term opportunity. Man, it's really hard to say you don't want to bring a young family to Southern California You know what I mean? Like there's a lot there, and I think that's a very interesting possibility. But it would take a real effort from both the ownership and management to go to him and be like, "What's it going to take, man? What is it going to take for us to make you move your family? What kind of contract, what kind of guaranteed money, what kind of buyout, things like that, right? Just go to him and just be like, how do we make sure that you're our coach? Because we really think, given the talent that we have and where some of the other teams in our division are headed, that we're going to have a real window here to be a major competitor, a major contender every year for 7 or 8 years. You know, and it's just that's kind of just what I've been thinking about is, what is the argument for Greg Cronin? And if the argument isn't great, what are we looking at here that gets us to a point where we're excited about going into next year?
No, yeah, that's fair. I mean, I wonder if you can do both in the same off season. I mean, you can, but in terms of like going out and pursuing the big free agent and getting the new coach in, and how much they play off each other in terms of time needed to get it done. It'll be interesting to see, because obviously both are going to be a big part of this summer.
Well,
But
yes, but the one thing okay, I'm going to speak specifically to the David Carl part of it. He's the one that I think would take the most time to line up, and as we have seen, the year wraps up for college with time for players to um, make appearances for 2-3 games sometimes. So I think there would still be an opportunity before the playoffs start for the team to go and talk to him, which gives you all of the playoffs going into the draft, and then you hopefully by the draft or shortly after the draft, you're announcing, I mean by the draft really, you're announcing that this is our guy, and then going into free agency, you're able to put that guy in the meetings with you, and you're looking at everybody, you're like, this is him, this is the style we want to play, this is his expectations for where you fit into this. That works. I think there's enough time, but boy, they would have to be on it right now. Like they would have to be on it right now. Oh, so is that the framing? I hadn't heard that part of it. Mm-hmm. On the smaller ice. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's very surprising. It's clearly something that the team that he played for was not expecting. They had a pretty straightforward comment from, I think, the coach, who was just like, yeah, like, I don't know what we're supposed to do other than focus on the guys we have and not the guys we don't. So, like, I do kind of feel like when you're getting straight up hockey cliches like that, you have a team that isn't pretty happy that he's been recalled. But the agreement states that first round picks can be recalled. Look, man, bringing in a killer for the playoffs is awesome. I just think that's cool as hell. Like, just going to have this dude out there who's trying to make a name for himself. He's trying to impress everybody. Hopefully, he's able to use the North American ice not only to just absolutely destroy people, but also to help kind of mitigate some of the risks of him going for those hits, because we want him to be the guy that he is. They drafted him to be that guy. They want him to go out there and hurt people and make the idea of coming into the center of the ice and coming across the blue line just brutally painful.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna be fun to watch. He's just different from what we have on the roster right now, in terms of like projecting it outwards. Ideally in a perfect world, he'd be a right shot defenseman. And
God, if we could just wave a magic wand and he held the stick the other way, he'd be great.
Yeah. But still, stylistically, he's exactly kind of what you want to add to this mix of young, skilled defensemen. To bring him in, I mean, listen, he's been playing against men for like the last 2, 3, 4 seasons, playing in Norway and then playing in Sweden now. He's just a monster from what I've seen. I mean, obviously, we dove heavily into his draft season clips and his pre-draft clips just to look at him, and everything you've heard about how he's played this year is how well he's adjusted, playing top 4 minutes in the men's league again in his first season in what is arguably either second or third best league in the world, to be I think 18, 19 and play top 4 meaningful minutes and play well. Like they are devastated. They're losing this guy at this point of their season, and that's something you can't really say too often about an 18, 19-year-old defenseman playing in Sweden in the SHL. So I think his adjustment period shouldn't be too long, if at all, just because of the way he plays. I think it's well suited for the smaller ice, and I'm just looking forward to seeing him with the Ducks in general, with the big club, and getting some minutes there and seeing how he fits in this team, because he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. He's going to be a fan favorite for sure, just the way he plays, right? He's a throwback, old school type guy, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I feel like he's certainly going to be thrown into the Swedenheim thing, even though he's not Swedish, but he's definitely going to get lumped into that because people are just going to assume that he's one of the other Swedes that we have on this roster.
Right. Yeah, no, but I mean, it's going to be good. I think, I mean, look, we played against Nicholas Kronwall for a long time. The idea of having him on our side this time would be lovely. Because that's kind of his guy. He's a baby Kronwall type. And if that's what they're able to get, that's going to be great. And having someone who, again, plays like, it's why we signed Radko. It's why we traded for Jacob Trouba, someone who plays with that level of violence and menace. It's why we got a first-round pick. I think it was a first-round pick. First-round pick for no, it was a second in Helleson for Josh Manson. Right, that style of play has real value, and so if this team is able to help him develop, and he's. Everything we heard at the draft was he actually has more offensive potential than maybe some of those guys did in the past, and that's one of the things that makes him an especially interesting player, and why he was someone that was worth trading back up into the middle of the first round. There's just a lot to like there. I'm very excited about what it seems like maybe he can be and what he can provide, and having the opportunity to have that type of player in the lineup. Again, you want multiple puck carriers. You want, multiple shooters. You also want multiple hammers in the lineup. And, they've got him and I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Him and Warren and Dionisio, Connor Smith. Yeah, they've got guys who can go out there and put a hurt on people and play a really smart defensive game. And they're not all going to hit. So adding more lottery tickets to that kind of stylistic approach, I think, is very good. And it's going to be interesting. I hope he has a good playoffs. I hope he gets a couple of big highlights and we see something from him that really makes you just kind of go, oh, yeah, there it is. That would rule.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, too, you're going to lose Gudis and Trouba eventually. Maybe you re-sign one of them, longer term. But at least lose
I think they're
them.
Signing Trouba to an extension July 1 this year. So
yeah, you're at least losing one of them at some point, right? Like that's the thing that you kind of gotta have in the back pocket there. So to bring in a younger guy who you can hope can kind of have a similar style of game, that's what you want to see. Is you always need a couple guys, especially on the blue line, to play like that. And listen, like Solberg's not just a big guy who can hit either. He's got a lot of skill to his game. He's not going to be a major.
I mean, he was
guy.
running the power play. I think the second power play unit for his team in his draft year.
Yeah, and like he's not gonna be a major points guy, but he certainly has enough there in terms of skill to be able to put it all together and not just be like no detriment to negative to Connor Smith, but he's not gonna just be the big enforcer type defenseman, right? Like he's got a little bit more to his game that can get him from bottom pairing defenseman to top four, right? Like he's got enough of that ability in the first pass.
I mean, yeah, there's, it's hard to say given who the left-handed players are ahead of him, but he is the kind of profile where you play a fourth defenseman on the top pair, right? Like, he would be a great complement for Tristan Luneau.
Yeah, or he's a guy you play Olin Zellweger on the offside with, and you play right. Like you can make that work, just for the ability to play those two guys together. So I think, I think there's a lot of upside there. I'm really interested in seeing how he does. But we do have obviously some big news from the rest of the trade line to get to, specifically Ronton, which we've kind of like briefly touched on with just the Rod Brindamore stuff that's come out from it. Getting moved from Carolina to Dallas for, I know it was Stankoven and 2 firsts. There was something else I think that was also.
It was 2 conditional firsts, Logan Stankoven, and 2 thirds. I gotta be honest, like, I don't know how you come out of this. So, okay. I think they won both trades.
Yep, so do I.
I really, really do. I think, again, this is a team that, as we have said for several years now, and as everybody who watches hockey has said, they have been starving for a goal scorer. Svechnikov has had issues staying healthy, and Sebastian Aho seems to kind of have somewhat of a cap as a low 30s guy. And so the opportunity to bring in, I'm pretty sure Logan Stankoven's a right shot. He technically plays center. I don't think he's going to play center for them.
No, he's too small for that. I can have that argument, but he's definitely too small for center.
Yeah, he's built well for it as far as, he's a thicker kid, kind of similar to Marco Rossi. But I just think having him be a winger and be, more of a Cole Caulfield than a tiny Austin Matthews, I just think makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But it does provide, flexibility and scheme and lineup and roster moving forward. And then they get 2 firsts. Now, again, to go back and quote Rachel Dory, or reference Rachel Dory, since I'm not saying anything specific, but like basically, I guess they pretty much had a deal agreed to with Vancouver to use one of those first to get Besser at the deadline. If they do that,
They just didn't have enough time to put it together, I think, is what their management team and Tulski came out and said, is they spent so much time figuring out the Rantanen situation, they just didn't have any time to go out and do anything else. And they looked at guys like Raquel, and the price apparently was ridiculous on Rickard Raquel. But listen, like, the only thing they lose out here is the kind of the embarrassment of the situation, added on comments from Rod Brindamore, like, you brought this guy in and then you ship him out 30 days later. It really doesn't ever happen. But for me, like, it doesn't really matter because it gets mitigated by the fact that, like, you won on the return. So if you had blew the return and that it's one of the worst things ever. But
right.
you win that return. Like, at the end of the day, take Rantanen out of the conversation. You basically traded Netchas, Drury, and I think it was a second for 2 firsts, Stankoven, and 2 thirds. You just got to haul for Netchas.
And
like,
Netchas was, for various reasons, both organizational side and Netchas side, did not look or does not seem to be a long-term fit. You know, there was a lot of talk that he didn't want to be there and he wasn't going to be open to signing a long-term extension. Yeah. And he's playing awesome in Colorado. He's also playing with Nathan McKinnon. So, like, we know why he's playing awesome. He's had a great year, in Carolina before getting there. And I think, if anything, if you're Colorado, what you're looking at is a player who maybe was playing up a little bit above where you internally think they can be, where Carolina felt they could be, but Carolina was like, you know what, we paid him all this money, and we gotta make this work, and we gotta give him the opportunity. He was playing top power play, all that stuff. So Colorado went out, got a guy who was feeling himself already at an organization that maybe he wasn't feeling or wasn't feeling him, and they're going to go playing with one of the best 4 players in the world. Like, I mean, man, if you're Colorado, you're really happy with the way that kind of went down. But if you're Carolina, like, I don't know, man, you won. And, like, again, I know Rantanen wasn't producing. All of his numbers are saying he was playing incredible hockey in Carolina. All of his underlying numbers are saying that. And so if that's, if that's what it is, like, that's good stuff, man. There's a lot to like there. And I just think Logan Stankoven is going to be such a great fit for them. He's going to play a style that Rod Brindamore is going to appreciate. He's certainly a tougher kid than you would think for being a small goal scorer. He is not a finesse player. He drives hard to get to the center of the ice and get chances. I think he's going to fit in really, really well for them, and I think he provides a dynamic that they have been trying really hard to find. But it's funny because he's a second-round draft pick, so this isn't necessarily accurate, but I think, in a spirit of the law kind of way, it is still very true because they have had so much success as an organization. He's a type of player they haven't had an opportunity to draft. And so
nice.
I'm sorry, Eddie. I need everyone to know how much nothing in this world makes me happier than waiting till the last possible second to lay it off for someone running. FIFA's great. What a great game.
I'm sure you struggle to focus on making that pass, but also try and make your point.
I didn't struggle at either of them. Well, I always struggle to make my point.
Them,
so let's be clear. Clearly it's not impeding my talking skills.
I think at the end of the day, nobody lost that deal. Nobody lost. Colorado had to move him out at the end of the day. Like, they kind of butchered and blew that situation, as much as you want to call it. They got Martin Netchas in, who is playing very well. They brought in Drury, who helps fill out the depth of the lineup, because we all know for a while Colorado's depth has been a major issue since losing Landeskog and since having Nichushkin in and out of the lineup. Like, they just really haven't had anything going.
Well, since Kadri too. Since losing Kadri in free agency,
exactly.
They were trying to find a 2C and they have not been successful at finding one.
Yeah, so you add all that in, you get a pick with it. I don't know if they moved it, but you can move it, or you can start filling the cupboards with it. Obviously, they moved Callum Ritchie out the door as well for Brock Nelson.
That one is crazy to me. I got to be honest, like,
that one you could
getting
probably
Jack
say they didn't
Drury
win that one.
makes you feel a little bit better about moving on from Callum Ritchie, but like, boy, they really need Brock Nelson to be good. If they don't make a conference finals, giving up Callum Ritchie is real tough, man.
Yeah, that
That's
one
a
felt
real
like
tough
a
move.
lot to have to give up for Brock Nelson. And I think Brock Nelson's a great player, and he does make Colorado a lot better. Again, we talk about that depth, but that felt like a lot to give up. But I guess if you're moving Rantanen, you kind of have to go for it, especially with the way this team is kind of built as well. You kind of have to go for it, and having one good prospect and you're covered at that point. If you can make yourself better for the short term to try and win another cup, they're kind of in that position that they have to do that.
Yeah, and look, they go out and they flip Casey Middlestat and get Charlie Coyle. So there is something to be said of adding Brock Nelson to be their 2C and then going out and getting Charlie Coyle to be their 3C. They get Casey Middlestat out of there, which just is not a move that worked. It's aggressive. You like it. You like to see it. It's just it's interesting to me that they traded the third best player on their team, and that move had less risk than trading their best prospect.
Yeah.
Given that they're a team who is clearly competing now, right? Like, of all the things where you're like, you go out and trade your best prospect, it's the situation you're in if you're Colorado. Nathan McKinnon is fucking incredible. Cale Makar, incredible. You're not going to get Landeskog back. You really do have to figure out a way to make this tenable. And I'm going to remind you. Oh my goodness, Eddy. That was funny. But yeah, so like it's funny to me that given the how do you say it? If you look at the objective process math, trading Ritchie is far more of a logical and defensible move than trading Mikko Rantanen, and yet I do think they did better in their Rantanen trade than they did in their Ritchie trade. And I that's a crazy thing to me.
No, yeah, I mean, I think you could comfortably say every team kind of won out with the way things are going right now. Carolina gets a very good return. They lose out on, now, right?
Yeah.
Like a Netchester or Rantanen production now. But they certainly they get one Stankoven who maybe not as good as Rantanen, but I could see him being a Netchast type player, a 60, 70-point player for sure. And he's younger and cost controlled at the moment. You get 2 first-round picks to play with, whether you want to draft, and Carolina's been great at drafting, or move them for assets, which they probably will end up doing. So they went out there. And then Dallas, when we talk about teams needing that type of player, and Carolina's at the top of the list, I think Dallas is probably number 2 in terms of needing that kind of superstar, and they have some really good players on their roster already. But Rantanen checks that box for them to take the next step.
Is Rantanen the 4th best player on that team?
I think he's the best player on that team.
See, I don't think he's better than Robertson.
Yeah, you can make that argument, but
I think Robo's better, and I think there's a legitimate argument that Miro Heiskanen's a better player.
Maybe it's hard to compare the two for them, but
I like.
But he's not 4 because Y Johnston I don't think is better than
no. What you're doing is you're basically, if you're saying he's 4, you're saying it's one of Hintz, Johnston, and Ottinger.
Ottinger, yeah.
And Harley
certainly adds
Canada
to
now
the
because
roster,
all you fucking dorks love Thomas Harley now because he saved Canada's gold or whatever. But like
it does something for that roster.
No, 100%.
They need it. Yeah, they
makes them
needed
scary.
it.
It makes them very scary. I mean,
they're deep. That's the thing.
They're deep
healthy.
in stars.
Like imagine if Sagan was healthy. The crazy thing is, I thought they would never be able to turn around a competitive roster while still having Ben and Sagan on this team. They're still on this team, and they've turned around a pretty competitive roster.
$9.5 million.
Hintz, Rantanen, Robertson, Wyatt Johnston, Leon Bichelle came into the roster and looked really good. Obviously, you still got S. Lindell, Heiskanen, Thomas Harley. Jake Ottinger is one of the top goaltenders in the league. It's a really, Duchesne is there and playing well. It's a really fun team. It's a really fun team, and I think they're going to have a chance at winning it all. They might be the best of the West, honestly, right now.
I think they have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only teams that you say have a chance at being better to come out of, or have a better chance to come out of the West is, I mean, technically I'm supposed to say Edmonton, even though they're fake.
I don't think the Jets are for real when it comes playoff time. I really don't.
I don't like that. I think you're looking at Colorado and Vegas as the two teams that can really push them.
Yeah, and I think when you compare roster to roster, now adding Rantanen into that mix, you have to. You can't give the favor to Colorado after losing Rantanen.
Right, that's exactly right.
Not only did the Stars are the only thing the Stars don't have that Colorado has is Makar and McKinnon. Right, they have Robertson, Rantanen, Heiskanen, which is very good, but it's not Makar and McKinnon, and that's where the edge in superstar talent goes to Colorado. But the rest of that roster, it's all you have to give it to Dallas.
I mean,
in terms of depth.
and
I would even say Vegas as well. I like Gaden Hill. I like their goaltending, but it's not Jake Ottinger. The defense is not. Again, Pietrangelo, Hannafin are great, but Theodore, I still think Heiskanen, you could argue, is the best of the bunch there.
Yeah.
And then the forward group, Eichel, Hurdle, Stone. But again, it comes down to the depth and talent on the rest of that roster. I give the edge to the Stars, man. I really think now adding this piece, they were in the mix before, and you could properly put them in the mix with those teams, but you're probably giving the edge before Rantanen to Colorado and maybe even to Vegas. I think now adding Rantanen, they kind of jump above to the top of that pack, and you have to give them now the edge over those other teams to get it done.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're going to have Rantanen and Robertson on separate lines. If nothing else, they are going to have two lines with two of the 6 best wingers in the league on them.
Yeah, let's look at what they're running as of recently. So they're stacking it right now, but they're running Hintz, Rantanen, Robertson, Duchesne. Oh, I forgot they got Granlund. Duchesne, Granlund, Marchment, Wyatt Johnson, Dadonov, Ben, and the fourth line is still very good for a fourth line. Maverick Bork, Sam Steele, Oscar Back, and that is with Tyler Seguin out of the lineup as well.
Sam Steele from the London Knights? Is that where he played? Did he play for the London Knights?
No, Regina Pats.
Oh, he was a Pat. Okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
Sam Steele, 140-point player for the Regina Pats when we thought he was going to be the next thing, the next big thing. Yeah. He's found a nice home there, man. Good for him. I hope
he's done well with that ridiculous mustache he's got going on.
Hey, man, yeah, I love it. It's legendary.
It's something, is what it is. I'll tell you that much. That mustache really is something. That's a proper mustache. You got to give him credit for that, if nothing else.
But with the Rantanen situation resolved and signed and everything, it really does put again. I don't want to continue because we've talked about it to death, but it really does put a ton of pressure on every team for the Marner situation in the summer like that. It was them two, and that was it. That those were the two big fish, and they don't really those types of guys don't come available in free agency often. Well, now Rantanen's off the table. He signed the 8-year contract with the Dallas Stars, so all of a sudden, all the pressure is on Marner.
What did he take? 12.5. Does that hurt Marner? Can Marner still maybe get his 13 that he seems to want?
I think Marner can get his 13 because he can only sign 7 years. So I think I think the 8-year and the fact that the no state tax, I think those are going to play into why Rantanen got 12.5 versus getting 13. So I think we'll have to. I think we'll have to.
Eddy just scored a worldie, and I freaked out a little bit. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, I think it depends where he goes. But again, if he goes to, let's say, Anaheim, I don't think it hurts him because I think he can.
Because Anaheim isn't going to be in a position to tell him he doesn't deserve $13.5 million.
Yeah. But you in any team, maybe, I guess, that doesn't have the no state tax, if you take that out of it, right? Like you could say he'll put that, him and his agent will put that in front of him and say, well, this is why he took less, and then also the 8 years, and we can't give you 8 years, so you're gonna have to pay me more for 7 years, to kind of equal out the value there. So I think I do think some team will play him 13 to 13.5, and I think that's where he's going to land. I can't see him signing for less than 13. I really can't, because I think there will be somebody that will give him it. And again, the Ducks are in the best position to be the team that does that, just because of the cap space that they have, and hopefully the plan that they can pitch him on. But yeah, it heaps a lot of pressure. Again, I don't want to go down the Marner path again because we've beat it to death so far, but I think it does put a lot of pressure on teams to really heavily pursue him that were in on Mikko Rantanen.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it makes him pretty definitively now the number one free agent. So, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a fun summer. I guess the other big trade that's kind of worth talking about is the Seth Jones trade. Your favorite player. God, you almost scored a bicycle kick. If you just scored a bicycle kick while we were recording, I would have canceled the podcast.
While we were talking about Seth Jones.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been unbearable.
What was the return? I still can't.
They got Spencer Knight in a first, and they had to retain $2 million, $2.5 million. Yeah, he's a $7.5 million player for them, or $7 million player. So they had to retain $2.5 million for like 5 more years after this one. And they got Spencer Knight, who's still only like 22, 23, and a first-round pick in 2027, I think. And if they don't have the 2027 pick, it goes to 2028. But they're getting a first-round pick. Mm-hmm. I was really fascinated. A lot of the talk around this trade that some people didn't think they got enough. Some people felt that they shouldn't have retained. Some people felt they shouldn't have moved Seth Jones to begin with. I love this game so much. I thought this was, boy, especially before the Rantanen trade, I thought this was, even, I guess, the second Rantanen trade, I thought this was the most interesting trade of the deadline, just because, like, I don't think people know what to say or do when teams have supposed great young players. Like, everything about why this trade is bad is because Connor Bedard needs NHL talent on his roster. But, like, Seth Jones was really bad for them. Like, he was not good, and he was unhappy. I don't want to pay someone $9.5 million to be bad and miserable. Like, that doesn't feel worth it to me. I don't, I think the best part of his game at this point was he can play 20 minutes a night without breaking a sweat. Because, look, if there's nothing else, he can eat minutes up. We saw that when it was him and Werenski in Columbus. They can eat minutes. And he plays a nasty game. He's a physical dude. He's got a temper. Like,
and he can be a proper power play quarterback for a team.
No, he can't.
Okay, he's not, more than what they have. That's because
they don't have good players. But I don't think he fixed their "we don't have good players" problem. I
think he's much better than Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad at running a power play. I think
he's better than Aaron Ekblad at running a power play?
Yes, I think he's better than Aaron Ekblad. Lost his job at plenty of times. Lost his job to Gustav Forsling because he couldn't get it done on the power play.
Well, that's because he was also taking drugs apparently. So
yeah,
my man's on the juice.
Regardless, I don't know if I mean, listen, it spells the end of Aaron Ekblad because you don't go out and get Seth Jones if
Yeah.
you're going to bring Aaron Ekblad back.
Yeah, no, if
to
he's
the
coming back.
organization. He's a pending UFA this summer, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes too. But no, that is your new guy, and there wasn't a lot of options out there. And I think Florida just got put into a position where they felt like they had to go out and get somebody that was going to be long-term replacement for Aaron Ekblad. And at the time, I feel like the only option that was out there was Seth Jones, without having to wait till the offseason. They didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going out and you're looking for technically this is a top pair right shot defenseman, then yeah. But like again, I don't know, man. The thing with Seth Jones for me, and it's been this way for a while, is like he was genuinely great when he was in Columbus. He did not have a great last year in Columbus, and he was atrocious his entire time in Chicago.
That team was bad too.
No, 100%. Like he wasn't in a good position, but he was brought in to help fix, and it didn't fix anything. He didn't make anything better. Okay, I hate you. I hate you so much right now. You play that ball on the ground, it's a very different conversation.
I meant to, and I pressed the wrong button.
You didn't mean shit. That's your favorite little stupid pass. But yeah, I just think, like I really get it for them. If you're them at this point, there shouldn't be a player you don't think you can fix. He's going to be under control for 5 more years. He plays that style. He's got that disposition. I think there's a chance that like we get 75-85% of the old. Oh my God, my brain. The old Seth Jones back, and that's not nothing. That's a sizable improvement from the shell of himself that he's been the last several years. But given what I think of him, I don't think they could have done better. And I also don't think eating $2.5 million is that big of a deal to get a guy who could potentially be the number 1 goalie for your team for the next 6-7 years. Spencer Knight is of that caliber, of that pedigree. He's had issues with, I believe it was OCD and anxiety, was why he was in the player assistance program. It wasn't, as best we know, he's been pretty open about it. It wasn't addiction related or anything like that. It was OCD and anxiety. And if he's able to, get that under control. Oh, I don't like the way I said that. I'm not going to lie. I don't, that sounded like I was kind of vilifying or demonizing addiction in a way that I very much did not intend to do. And I don't like that. So I just want to say I'm sorry for that. I didn't like that at all. But like, what he was in the player assistance program for was OCD and anxiety. And if he's able to get that under control through, therapy and medication and things like that, and able to get back to being, one of the best young goaltending prospects in hockey, I don't see how that's not a win. We traded a guy who isn't good for a guy who could be the starter at his position for 7 years.
Yeah, I mean,
and you get a first-round pick out of it.
He was. I haven't looked at him in like the last probably 4 or 5 games for him, but like that big stretch of games, like the first stretch of games he had, the first like 3, 4, 5 games for Chicago, he played really well. Again, yeah, I haven't looked at the last few, and knowing Chicago, it could have fallen off a cliff. But I mean, he's shown that in stretches in Florida as well. So again, it's a really good return for Chicago. It really makes a lot of sense. They didn't have a lot of any goaltenders in the pipeline, and you bring in a guy who can start now, and you can build around the rest of this team that you're building. It makes sense. I do think maybe more than you, I like the fit for Florida. Again, with the options out there, I really think like there is some value to bringing in Seth Jones and what he can bring to their roster. And Aaron Ekblad's out of the roster right now, so you really needed something on the right shot. So
very much so.
They kind of like,
they lost Montour in the offseason, and Ekblad obviously gets the big suspension, and he's a free agent, so there's just question marks abound for him. I think I think it's a good move for Florida. I'm not overly confident that they're going to get enough out of him that it's going to be a complete and total win.
No, that's fair.
Because the pick doesn't matter. The pick just does not matter to them unless you want to say, well, they could have traded for a different player or whatever. They traded for this guy. They had to make a choice. I don't mind the pick, giving up a pick. I don't, given how much he makes, I think he makes almost $5 million. I don't mind moving on from him and just riding with Bobrovsky. I don't mind the mechanics of the decision. I just don't love the player, and I'm not overly confident that this player is going to return to form. Mm-hmm. So, but no, I think you're right. I think given all of the variables, I do think it was a really good move for them, and it's a risk worth taking. But I do not, by any stretch of the imagination, think that Chicago got fleeced or Chicago really messed up, as I saw some people say. There are people who really did not like this for Chicago, and I very much don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, with Florida as well, I mean, we might as well. Do you have anybody else other than Seth Jones you wanted to cover, or no? So the only other thing I was gonna cover then is the other move that Florida made, which was Brad Marchand.
Yeah, let's do that. Well, we're already on Florida anyways.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about teams that are deep in Dallas. Florida gives a run for their money in terms of talent when they're back, because Matthew Tkachuk and Brad Marchand are out right now. But the top 9 for Florida will be Barkov, Rodriguez, Reinhart, Bennett, Marchand, Tkachuk, Lindell, Verhaeghe, Samoskevich. And Samoskevich has been great over the last 10, 15 games. I think he's almost a point per game, if not over that. So he's been really good. That is some top 9 to be able to roll out. And how is Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk the toughest line to play against in the league? Probably. You'd have
toughest. I don't know about toughest. I don't know if there's a more annoying group of 3 players you can put together.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to put it. Is it's the most annoying group to put out there.
It's 3 guys who would be league leading pests and rats on any other team, and they're gonna play, possibly all 3 play together. The idea of playing those 3 guys together is just, I mean, God, dude, it really is just it's Looney Tunes shit. It really is loony. How you watch Wile E. Coyote, whatever, and it's just, or Bugs Bunny, and Bugs Bunny's like, oh, I hit him with a chair, and then I hit him with a chainsaw, and then I cut his legs off, and then I did this, and you're just yeah, it's just a series of events that are just absurd and painful and comical. You're going to have to do that in a hockey game now. You're going to have to play against, 3 versions of the meanest Bugs Bunny character you've ever seen. It's absurd. Honestly, it's Tom and Jerry. That's what it is. It's a Tom and Jerry line. It's just oh yeah, I made you shoot your own face off, and then I made you cut your own tail off, and then I made you do this, and then I made you do that. It's going to be gross. It's going to be so gross. It's going to look like professional wrestling. There is a non-zero chance that there is a scrum in the front of the net and Brad Marchand cuts his own face just to make it look insane. There's a non-zero chance. It's going to look like the Attitude Era out there. It could be the most fun and awful hockey line that we've seen in 15 years.
That's going to be fun in playoffs, too.
Yeah. When they don't call anything, it's going to be great. I am so excited to see what it looks like if they really do play those 3 guys together.
The silence of trying.
Oh yeah,
trying to clutch up a last minute goal.
Do we know what the final score on the Ducks game was yet?
7-2.
Oh Jesus! I walked away for literally a minute and I missed 3 goals. I walked away at 2-0. I came back, it was 4-1. I was like, what the?
No, yeah, if you could have watched the first couple minutes of the game, and it was 2-0 after the first 3 shots.
Yeah, I missed the first one, and I came back, and I walked, dude. I came in, turned the game on, missed the first goal. As I was texting you, oh wow, I missed the first goal. They scored the second one, that was truly the highlight of it all for me. That's how you know you have a game ahead of you.
That's the way things have gone lately.
I'm just glad we can stop pretending they're in the playoff chase.
Well, I mean, they keep coming back into it. They were out of it, and then yesterday or before this game, they won the last one against, was it Utah? They beat, or who was it? They beat somebody. No, I don't think it was. I don't think they beat anybody in the playoff race. But Calgary lost to Colorado, and I think Utah lost or Vancouver lost. So they were back. They were within 5 points of Calgary for the final spot after being like 9 points up before that. So it was a classic 4-point game that they won, and we're back in the mix. Well, now after losing to the Blues and Utah winning tonight, that's all pretty much erased again. Gotta love being in the playoff hunt. That one day you can be back into it, and then Seattle picked up a point, who's behind the Ducks. So the only benefit is that Utah beat Vancouver, and where does that put us right now? Back to being 8 points out of a playoff spot behind the Canucks, and the Flames have 2 games in hand and are sitting at 71 points. So, and now the Blues have leapfrogged to 8 points in front of us as well, and that's 2 spots outside the wild card. And Utah, who won tonight, is 6 points up, and they're 3 spots away from a playoff spot. So there's a lot of teams running for it in front of us. Seattle again winning is 3 points behind us. So does feel like we're kind of just going to be in this perpetual loop of being somewhere between 5 to 10 points out of a playoff spot, which, I mean, listen, it's better than being at the bottom. We at least had some hope. As much as we personally didn't have some hope, the fan base had some hope.
Well, the roster had hope, and I think that's what matters. Like, I don't really give a shit about the fans. Like, look, because like if you're a fan and you're watching this, like if you're telling yourself that they're really in it, like that's fine if you want to lie to yourself, but you should at least know you're lying to yourself. What actually matters, like I heard there was a quote from Nick Suzuki, I think yesterday or the day before, where he was like, "We're scoreboard watching." He said, "We haven't been scoreboard watching in years. Like I'm watching what's happening around the league in March because we have a shot." That matters in the room. That matters to them, that these guys know they're not going out there for 60 minutes for nothing.
Yeah.
That has more value to me than anything. Like, fans lie to themselves all the time. I don't care about that. There is actually one other team that I wanted to talk about, and we've actually talked about them a ton tonight without ever actually saying their name. What did you think of Toronto adding Brandon Carlo and Scott Laughton?
I think it's fine. I think it's good. I think it fills holes in that roster, and it seems to be the types of guys that they like to add. I think somehow, from a lot of the Leafs fans that I know I've talked to around here, the amount of times that they played the Bruins, they don't know a ton about Brandon Carlo. I'm sure.
How do they not?
There's a lot of Leafs.
What?
I'm sure there's a lot of Leafs fans who do. The ones that I know personally weren't fans with it. Maybe that's just the bias of hating the Bruins. Sure. And right, I don't know what it is, but I think that's a great addition for them to add to the right side of the defense. I think it really fits to what they needed. I think the defense core is perfectly fine now. It's not elite by any means, but it's good enough to compete and run and go for a Stanley Cup. I think Scott Laughton is a good addition to that forward group. Now, I guess they have him as a third-line center, but he's certainly a guy who could, and if need be, especially in the playoffs, jump up and play top 6 minutes if they have to. I mean, it's not like that Leafs top 6 is impenetrable, right? Like it really isn't impossible for players to break into it. Like it's Matthews, Tavares, Marner, And Nylander, who apparently, according to Daily Faceoff, is playing on the third line with Scott Laughton and Calle Jarnkrok. I'm not going to take that as is right now. But the mainstays in that top six are Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Nylander, and I guess you could say Matthew Nye. So it's not impossible for Scott Laughton eventually, if they felt like they needed to break in over Bobby McMahon or even Max Domi, if he needed to, or they felt like it. And if not, he's a perfectly great third line option for them, a guy who can play hard minutes, can play in the penalty kill, and it was something they needed for the rest of that roster and the players that the personnel that they have. To add him to be an all situations type player, I think is great. So they're just good moves, good little moves for the Leafs that fill some holes in their roster to be able to make them a tough team to play against and hopefully go for them for a long run in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. I have no faith in that goaltending as much as I would love Anthony Stolarz to be the guy for them. And it's just the Leafs, man. They're just gonna find a way to not get it done. It's just I have more faith in the Oilers than I do the Leafs, because at least the Oilers have made it to the Stanley Cup final and have shown that they can go the distance. I don't have any faith in the Leafs in being able to do that, and they have the roster to get it done. I don't know if I have any faith in that.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, man. I think they're perfect moves.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there are 4 guys on this team, maybe 5, who are going to make this team a real thing in the playoffs. It's Tavares and Matthews and Marner and Nylander and probably Morgan Riley.
Right.
I still don't love the lack of high-end talent on their blue line. I think Morgan Riley is at best a middle-of-the-pack number 2. I don't think he's much more than that. But, I really like that they have Chris Tanev. I really like that they have Brandon Carlo. I like that they have Jake McCabe. They've got a very solid blue line. If unspectacular, I think that blue line has 60 minutes of solid hockey in them.
Yep.
I think Scott Laughton being able to play on their third line and take most of the matchups, and if you're splitting over the course of a game the matchups for their top line against Austin Matthews and Scott Laughton, I think you're in a good place. It frees up the second line of John Tavares and I think Nylander to be a better, and it makes Max Domi less important. And I cannot stress enough how good a decision it is when you run a hockey team to minimize how much you have to rely on Max Domi. They don't have to play him at center now. They can move him to the wing and let him do his BS playmaking thing. He's such a fraud. It's whatever. But I really like this for the team. And to be honest, I have more faith in Anthony Stolarz than any goalie they've had in the last 7 years.
No, yeah, that's fair.
I really like Anthony Stolarz. He's going to have something to prove. He's going to have the experience. His career trajectory, right? He kind of finds himself in Anaheim, plays really great. He moves on to Florida. He's part of that great run. They win the Cup. He plays meaningful minutes in meaningful games for them in the season and in the playoffs. And now he's there, and he's clearly the number one guy there. It was supposed to be Woll for sure, and he didn't grab it. And I think Anthony Stolarz is going to be their guy going into the playoffs. I like that team. I like where this is. Brandon Carlo, again, is a perfect fourth defenseman. You know what I mean? I talked about it constantly. I still think Matt Grzelcyk and Brandon Carlo, when they were playing together those 2-3 years in Boston on that second pair, there wasn't a better second pair in conception and in implement. That's a really good setup for them. I think this is a real thing. I do think that there is a part of it is they're always going to be the Leafs, and for as long as they're the Leafs, they're going to have to get over the hump before anybody thinks they can. But I do think we have to remember that they have been in the division from hell they had Florida, Boston, and Tampa all in their division for their best years. Now, I think everyone kind of assumes they're going to not have Mitch Marner next year, so if they're going to make it happen, it's got to be this year. But I think this is a good opportunity for them. Oh, that's the other team we should talk about is Tampa Bay. Oh, did we talk about them because they made that move before our deadline preview?
Yanni Gord and
Oliver Bjorkstrand? No, I don't think we talked about it. But yeah,
I remember talking about Bjorkstrand, but I don't know if we
might have just been talking to us.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah,
it's a good move. I like it. Yanni Gord's been good for them. But yeah, I mean, it is time for the Leafs because it was always Boston, Florida, and Tampa. Mm-hmm. Now it's just Florida and Tampa.
Right.
And even this isn't the same Tampa that they were going against when Tampa was at its peak. It's still a very good team, don't get me wrong, but it's not that same, what felt like an unbeatable roster, right? Even the Panthers. The Panthers are very good, obviously, defending Stanley Cup champs, but I don't put them in that same category as what it felt like to go against the Lightning when they were, just running the league at that time. So this is the window, and it has to be, like you'd mentioned, because Mitch Marner likely isn't coming back, or you at least have to operate with that urgency that he's not going to come back, and this roster is going to look a hell of a lot different next year without him on it. And John Tavares is a pending UFA as well. I think he comes back, but there's no guarantee. So what does this
He's
roster
not going to
look
go
like?
Anywhere else.
No, I don't see it, but you just have to operate with the urgency that both these guys are pending UFAs. There's no guarantee either of them are back next season. This is your last shot with this roster to go out and get it done. They're likely going to face the Lightning in round one.
Mm-hmm.
So barring maybe not. Because they have 2 games in hand on the Panthers, so if they both won them, all 3 teams would be tied in 85 points, so it's not guaranteed. But they're going to face either Florida or Tampa, one of the 2 Florida teams in the first round of the playoffs, which is not going to be easy. And then, assuming things go as the way you think they are, you're going to play the other one in round 2. So you've got to get through them at the end of the day, and then honestly, I would say things probably get easier from there. Whether you're probably facing Carolina or Washington at that point. Washington has been a juggernaut this year, but I don't think on paper I would say that they are a better team than the Lightning or the Panthers. It certainly doesn't get easier. It certainly doesn't get easier because if Washington is making it to the Eastern Conference Final, it's some sort of Ovi-driven, super team at that point. That is just a point to prove to get Ovi another cup before he's done. So
Dylan
it certainly
Strome, Conn Smythe winner. Let's go.
It certainly wouldn't be an easy matchup by any means, but I mean they've got something to prove, and you got to go out and beat the best of the best. The most recent dynasty and the defending Stanley Cup champs to get to the ultimate goal is what the Leafs have to go through. So maybe the division is essentially weaker, but the first and second round matchups certainly aren't any easier for the Leafs heading into the playoffs.
No, not at all. I mean,
would it be better for Toronto to fall below where the Senators are and just have one of those
cross division?
Yeah, to get, I guess it would be Washington, right? To get Washington.
Oh my God, dude! I think, look, there is absolutely a world where that's the best thing that could possibly happen for them. Because
they won't though, because the Rangers are the bottom wild card team. I don't think points wise they could make it happen.
No.
But yeah, but I think you could argue that as good as Washington is, you could argue that that's probably the team you'd want to play in round 1 versus Florida or Tampa.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think. Oh man, that's I like it for. So the thing with Toronto that's weird is, sorry, it sounded like something hit my window, which is not.
Is that the only team who would have to get to the Stanley Cup final? Would have to play three teams, potentially three teams that have won a cup in the last decade to get there. You have to beat Florida, Tampa, and Washington. I mean, that's assuming they all. I mean, that's assuming they all go through, and Washington can get past, Carolina or New Jersey or something like that. But
Okay, so
I don't think any other team could even have that path, especially in the West, because it's just Vegas who's won a cup in the last decade. I don't think LA fits that category anymore.
Yeah. Well, you got Colorado.
Yeah, Vegas and Colorado. So I don't think there's any possibility for any team to.
Yeah, I mean, because LA won their last cup in 2014.
Yeah, I mean, if LA fits, the only team you could have that argument with is Edmonton having that type of run, having to go through LA, then having to go through Vegas, and then having to go through Colorado. So to two Canadian.
Yeah,
teams.
But even then, if you're Edmonton, that doesn't really count because they've beaten the shit out of LA in the first round every year for like 3 years in a row now.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're looking at that as being a similar one. But yeah,
Edmonton
that's right.
Beat Vegas last year in their run, did they not?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to have to get to. I think they did at least
No,
to get to the final.
They didn't play Vegas.
Did Vegas lose?
Edmonton. All right, give me a second. I'm gonna look this up. This is stupid. Standings.
Regardless, it would be a very tough run for the Leafs to get there. We talk about bringing in players with experience and players who've done it to add to playoff experience for a team like that, and then you go up against three teams who won it recently. One of the most recent dynasty, and then obviously the defending Stanley Cup champs on your way to get to the Stanley Cup final, and then presumably you could have a four there by having to face Colorado or Vegas in the Stanley Cup finals. So
yeah, because I think Edmonton played LA, and then they played Vancouver. Because Vancouver beat Nashville in the first round. Yeah, they went LA, Vancouver, Dallas. Because Colorado beat Winnipeg in the first round, and then Colorado lost to Dallas. Man, that's crazy.
Can't wait for playoff hockey. It'd be nice to get some.
It's gonna be
fun,
man. I gotta admit, I am eagerly awaiting the day that I don't enjoy the playoffs anymore because the Ducks are in it. It's stressful, but
yeah,
God, it's nice to just be able to watch and just be this is fun. I just like hockey again.
Yeah, at this point though, I do miss it because you still get some of that. You can still watch some of the other games when
for sure.
the Ducks are in the playoffs, and you can still get some of that. But I do miss like the meaningful games, the stressful games. We haven't had those in the regular season for a very long time, and even when the Ducks are making the playoffs, like usually they were wrapped up and were pretty certain to get in, so you didn't really have any of those tough stretches to get into the playoffs. So there wasn't a ton of meaningful games per se during the regular season that you had that pit in your stomach that they were just painful to watch. You do miss that. I mean, I'm sure when it comes back and they lose a Game 7, we're gonna wish that they never were back.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, part of me does miss that, those types of games and what they mean and not being able to kind of look away and how important those games are. As much heartache and heartbreak we've had watching them lose to Nashville or lose to Chicago on their way to trying to win another Stanley Cup, you do miss seeing those games come April, May.
I very much agree. So let's see. All right, here's what we're going to do. This is the last thing we're going to do before we get out of here because I don't think we have much left to do. What you're going to help me right now, Eddie, is figure out what movie I'm supposed to go see tomorrow, I think.
Okay.
So I haven't been to the movie theater in friggin' forever. And because the Ducks played tonight and we were able to record tonight, on Sunday, I do not have to worry about using one of my weeknights to record. So I think I'm going to go see a movie.
Okay.
And we've got Black Bag, Novocaine, Mickey 17, Captain America: Brave New World, Opus, Paddington in Peru. Oh no, we don't have Paddington in Peru because those movies on. What is going on? Where are all the late night movies? Why are there no 8, 9 o'clock movies? Oh, The Monkey, 8:45. I am not a fan of how little late movies there are. Black Bag at 8:15, 7:30. That's not fun. I need later movies. I need much later movies. I need a good 9 o'clock movie I can walk to. I love a late movie. AMC Santa Monica 4. Oh, permanently closed. Wow. Didn't know that happened. So, all right. It looks like the latest movie tomorrow would be 8:45 or 8:30. Yeah, I should probably go see Captain America tomorrow, huh?
I was going to say Mickey 17 sounds like it's really good.
I want to see that really bad, but the earliest showing is at 7:30. And I like having a late movie.
No.
Although I am old now, so maybe a 7:30 movie is good because that gets me out.
No,
That gets me out about 10.
I always do the 9, 10 o'clock movies. Get out of there midnight, 1 a.m.
Yeah. Take a nice walk back to my apartment. Have a good time.
So it's the right vibe. You're the last theater getting out at the night, so you're just cruising out of there. I've heard Black Bag's really good as well, but
I feel like it would be. It's directed by Steven Soderbergh.
I just feel like it's just not. I don't think it's one I'm going to see in theaters. I think it's going to be one I
Black Bag.
You see after. I haven't heard anything about Opus.
I don't know anything about that.
It looks interesting, but I'm just looking at the movie poster, so I have no idea if.
There's a 3 o'clock Paddington in Peru, if I just want to leave in the middle of the day. The Monkey. I don't know what The Monkey is, but that's the latest showing.
It's a horror movie, Stephen King horror movie. The trailers seem very, very interesting. And it's a Stephen King movie, so it's really, apparently it's really graphic, it's really scary, but it's probably not, my experience, I don't know if horror movies in theaters are for me.
Oh, wait a minute. Elijah Wood, Tatiana Maslany. That's all good.
And this is what, The Monkey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it certainly, I think it looks really good. It'd probably be number 2 behind Mickey 17 for me to go see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just personally, the last few horror movies I've seen in theaters, I haven't walked away saying, well, it was much better for me seeing that in theaters versus seeing it at home. I watched Longlegs in theaters. I watched... what was the Talk to Me I watched in theaters? There was another one thrown in the mix there. And those were I rarely had seen horror movies. Oh, I saw Smile 2 in theaters as well.
Ooh, okay. Here's the thing. If I go on Tuesday, there's an Anora at 7:20. But that doesn't feel like a movie I need to see in theaters.
No, you see that's like...
It's going to be on HBO in 6 months.
And I'll probably be disappointed, to be honest. I'm just usually feel like I'm going to be disappointed by whatever movie wins Best Picture. Rarely does it come across. But
8:30 Black Bag on Wednesday. That's not nothing.
So you're going Captain America?
I might have to go see Captain America.
Listen, it's not as bad as everybody said it was.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement. Yeah, 8:30 Captain America. Well, at least it's under 2 hours. I didn't think it would be under 2 hours. I expected that to be a 2.5 hours.
It has its moments, and it's better than what the perception of what it was going to be is, if that makes sense. People thought it was going to be god-awful, and I don't think it was bad. I think it is what it is. And it did what it meant to do well, if that makes sense. It's a very poor explanation of it, but
if I go see this movie and it sucks, we're arguing about it for an hour on the next podcast.
Well, but so that's the thing. It's not good, but I went into it with the expectations that it wasn't going to be good, and it wasn't as bad as what I expected to see from what I had heard. So in that case, I came out of it. I probably have to watch it again now because that skewed my opinion of the movie because I went into it expecting it to be just a steaming pile of dog shit.
Sure.
And it had its moments. I was like, okay, this isn't that bad. But I did watch it at home as well. I didn't watch it in the theater. I watched it at home on a HD ripped version of it. So It was relatively decent quality. Yeah, but it didn't feel like one I needed to see in theaters for that one, or that I wanted to, per se. Like I would have, but I didn't have the time or anything to get out and see it. But
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, man, like it was okay, but like I don't know, man. I don't like the direction of it. I'm not a huge Anthony Mackie fan either, so like that, a lot of things were playing against of my opinion on that movie. Like there's a lot of things skewing what my opinion would be of that movie. So
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, our friend Chris said the same thing, basically. He was like, it's not as bad as everybody said it was, but it wasn't good.
yeah,
Like, honestly, at this point in the cycle, like, that sounds about right for Marvel.
I mean,
Especially
for me, it's either that or they knock it out of the park. Like with a few of the series that they've done. Obviously, like I've just started Daredevil Born Again, and the first 3 episodes were great.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Loki was great. So they've had their moments where things have been good, but then they've had their moments where things have been like there really is like, and I don't like. And now I'm gonna walk back on this because it sounds really stupid, but like I was gonna say, the things have either been meh or very good, but then there have been some things that were like the Marvels was not good, and
Yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah, see, it's the thing for me at this point in the Marvel cycle. Like, I just don't feel the need to see everything or watch everything.
yeah.
Once it hit Endgame, I was like, cool. That was it.
Well,
That was
and
my-
they've the TV series have kind of, in some of them, have made it where it's really not that big of a deal. Like I came across this, me and Jane rewatched all of the original Daredevil, all 3 seasons of it, and then I was in between because there's a long time in between that last season and Born Again. I was like, okay, what do I need to get caught up on to kind of, make sure I'm not missing anything, because there's a lot of lost time here, and they leave just a lot of it unexplained. And the shows that he does show up in, and the main characters of Daredevil show up in, like it really doesn't. There wasn't anything in them to really see. Like
Okay,
he
that's
shows
good.
up, he shows. You've watched She-Hulk. He shows up in She-Hulk, and the moments he shows up in She-Hulk aren't like impactful to story or anything like that.
Right.
He kind of is just there and shows up as like an added cameo for them to kind of sell that show and to get people to watch it. Kingpin shows up in Echo, but it's not really major plot. Like they do, it's not like you can skim through it, which is what I did. So they don't make those ones necessarily like you have to watch them. And some of these characters, I feel like you won't really see much of. Again, that's the thing. And when you do, it's like, okay, well, I saw them here, and I didn't really. You're not missing anything, right? Like it feels like a lot of the major plots moving on without them, so they've just kind of added a lot of this stuff in there, and maybe it all comes together at the end of the day. I don't know. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because of the storyline they put together that brought us all here in the first place, but I don't know. We got a big couple years in front of us to see what comes next.
Yeah, I mean, look, truly what matters the most is that today, finally, these, depending on how you look at it, either season 6 or season 5 part 2 of Yellowstone is finally going to be on Peacock. So really, that's what I'm going to be focusing on, is finishing Yellowstone.
I gotta watch that. I just I've had a ton of things on that I've been watching on and off, because now I've caught up on a lot of things, so it's been like weekly releases, and it doesn't fit a lot of room in to watch anything else and remember all of them. I did just finish Invincible though, because their season finale came out.
Yeah. I keep telling you I'm going to watch that and keep not doing it.
Well, hey, now you can, because you've got 3 seasons of all episodes are out. So
It's already on the 3rd season?
yeah,
That's crazy.
now you can just binge. I think it's only like 8 or 9 episodes a season, so it's
Yeah,
not too much.
Prime doesn't usually go crazy long. I know, and Reacher is back, so I just saw the pilot for, or not the pilot, it's not the pilot, the premiere for season 3 of Reacher, which was good. I liked it. Yeah, again, what matters more than anything is that I'm going to finally be able to finish Yellowstone, because I need it to be done. I need to know how it ends. I'm an absolute sucker for Taylor Sheridan. I've come to realize I am just in the bag for it. And then I need to finish my my Facebook Wine Mom television show, A Discovery of Witches, which I guess was on AMC in like 2019 to 2021 or something. But oh, dude, it's great. I'm so happy watching it. It's about like witches and vampires, and it's romantic. It's great. I love it so much. It's like
I will
like
say
adult Twilight. It's great.
Of all streaming platforms lately, Netflix is giving me more and more reasons to just cancel their service completely.
Yeah.
What was the new movie they just put out? It's Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown in it. It's like called The Electric State or something. It's terrible.
That sounds awful.
I haven't watched it, but I've heard it's terrible. It's got like
so bad.
a $350 million budget, and it's like all CGI. It just apparently is just awful. And if you like, you gotta go watch the trailer for this after, and then message me after this for. It's called The Electric State. Go watch the trailer for it, and just come back to me after you. You know, okay. I was gonna say watch it now because I want your reaction on the podcast, but I don't want them to have to wait here for 2 minutes for a trailer.
Wait, what is it called?
The Electric State or A Electric State or something.
I have everything up. The Electric State trailer. I'm just gonna talk through this as we watch it. Let's go. Oh my God, this looks terrible. Oh, this looks really bad. Okay, here we go. So we're shooting at stuff. There's a big old machine.
Chris Pratt looks like Ryan Gosling, or tries to look like Ryan Gosling with his haircut. Yeah, it's like just a mishmash of a bunch of movies. I got like Ready Player One vibes, and from like just the weird things in it, and it's got like the robots look like the robots from like Chippy. You ever seen that show?
No.
Movie? It's got the same like robot
What is
vibes.
happening?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, Stanley Tucci's in this.
Yeah, I mean, you can see where the budget went. You can see where the budget went with the actors and the CGI they had going in this. But it's
Her brother is a robot? Her brother is secretly a robot? Oh, it's from the Russos. No wonder it has a giant budget and it sucks ass.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this looks terrible. I have to watch this.
I have to hate watch it just to.
Oh my, dude, Eddie, we are not allowed to watch this till the season is over. But we are doing a 2-hour podcast about this movie this summer. There's a robot carrying a VW bus. Oh, we got mechs. Listen, I am here for mechs. I need us to bring back like proper mech video games.
I can't guarantee you there isn't going to be a night where I'm doing absolutely nothing and this is the only thing to watch and I throw it on just to see. Like I can't guarantee that doesn't happen.
Yeah, man, that looks so bad. Holy crap, that looks so bad. That's super funny how bad that looks.
Yeah.
I am a giant fan of how bad that looks.
So I'm gonna watch it just because I have to at this point. When something's that bad, you kind of just have to.
Oh, for sure. One of these days, I'll get around to watching part 2 of what's that?
I think I know what movie you're talking about.
The Rebel Moon. Yeah.
Rebel Moon. Yeah.
That first one.
That's another
awful.
Netflix movie that has an insane budget.
That first one is so bad.
That's what I've heard a lot of people compare this movie to in terms of like the visuals, the budget, and everything, and it just being like a giant mess of shit thrown together with like A-list actors and hoping that it sticks, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't.
Look, here's what I will say. That level of garbage is very much fantastic in the world in which movies are made. Like, it is very important that we make awful movies for way too much money. So, like, that's very encouraging to me. But, boy, does that one look especially bad. Yeah, the first Rebel Moon I watched, and it was so bad. Like, it just wasn't a good movie.
I do want to watch that one just again as well to see how bad it is. But
the thing about that one that I think really makes it special is, and this is my general criticism of Zack Snyder, he he has kind of good ideas, but like he's not a good filmmaker.
It just never comes together.
It doesn't ever come together. But like some of the ideas he has are very interesting, and I get where he's coming from sometimes. But like a lot, like that's the problem with Rebel Moon is it's hyper derivative. Everything in Rebel Moon you can pretty much go, oh, I know what that's from.
Yeah.
Like I get what this is supposed to be, and he's trying to make his version of this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really work. But like again, he's got Charlie Hunnam in it. He's got Jimon Hansu. He's got huge actors in these movies, and you're just like, I get why. I get why people want it to work in a room. I get why him telling you this idea might work. But then he makes the movie, and you're like, "Oh, this is fucking garbage."
Well, yeah, they've got some credit to their name as well and then a budget behind it, and a major, you got Netflix behind it that you're like, okay, like this, I can understand as an actor's hearing, like, okay, like this could be, but then it just never comes together, and it just never gets pieced together properly. You've got like puzzle pieces backwards and everything. It just doesn't work. But
yeah, all right. Let's let everybody go. We can talk about movies another time. They don't need to hear this. They don't need to be subjected to our nonsense.
Yeah. In terms of next show, I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to say we're going to be back here or when. I mean, we'll try and get back as soon as possible, but there is 15 games left in the season. I would imagine we'll be back before the end of the season. With something of some form. I don't know how much is going to go down for us to talk about and bring in, because obviously now post trade deadline there's not a ton that happens to bring up anything impactful to talk about, but we'll be back just to kind of talk Ducks and stuff around the NHL, and then obviously the next kind of big content driven show will be postseason, kind of reviewing everything, looking at what's next, and hopefully we'll have some information and updates on the time, what's happening with the coaching staff and kind of plans for the off season. So that will be kind of the next big one, I would imagine, probably early to mid-April. I don't know when the season ends. I know it goes a little bit further into April this year. So
all right, so here's what we're gonna do. This is gonna be the last thing we do before we say goodbye. I'm gonna read you the games left, and you are gonna tell me if you think it's a win or a loss. Okay? And I'm going to count the wins we have left in the last handful of games. Okay. Away at Dallas on Tuesday.
That's a loss.
Okay. At Nashville on Thursday.
Preds are just awful. I'll call that a win.
All right. Home versus Carolina.
That's a loss.
Home versus Boston.
That's a win.
Okay. Home versus New York.
I'm gonna say that one's a win too.
Okay. Home versus Toronto.
That's a loss. Toronto always spanks us.
Home versus San Jose. Here's the thing. That game is on April Fool's Day.
I'm gonna say it's a loss. I don't know. The Sharks are just I don't know, man.
At Calgary.
That's such an important game. Oh man, Calgary's always a good one. I'm at Calgary. I'll probably call that a loss.
At Vancouver.
I'll give that one to the Ducks. I'll say it's a win.
Okay. Home against Edmonton.
That's a loss. Draisaitl will kill us.
Home versus Calgary.
I'll give that one to the Ducks. That's a win.
At Los Angeles.
I just gotta say that one's a win just because I want it to be. I don't know if I have as much faith in it. But,
home versus Colorado.
It's a loss.
At Minnesota.
I'm gonna say it's a loss. I think that game's gonna mean a lot for Minnesota at that point. I think they're still gonna be in the mix there, so I'm gonna say it's a loss.
Hi. Sorry, my dog's on the couch making a bunch of noise randomly. He just woke up from like a 2-hour nap. And then the last game of the season at Winnipeg.
That's a win. They're gonna rest everybody, so I think it's gonna be a win.
You know what, Eddie? If you're right, we will win 7 out of our last 15 games, and I don't think anybody would have expected that. That's not bad.
I think that's on par with where we're at. I mean, we're a 500
right.
team. We're just under 500 team, so 7 of 15 makes sense, and you're out of a playoff spot at that point. Yeah.
29,
Whether it's
31,
the 7 I
and
said
7.
or not, but whether it's the 7 I said or not, I think 7 out of 15 makes sense for where this team is at. So
Okay. Well, you heard it here first, folks. You can go ahead and put those numbers in. Go ahead and start betting your mortgage on some of those. The Ducks will win 7 of the next 15 games.
All right. Well, we will be back as soon as we can with a new show. We'll keep you guys updated. And then, we'll be back for the big one at the end of the season to break everything down and look at what's next.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate it.
All right. Take care, guys.